Hey again, I'm Pete Andruskevich, a Thurston parent. This is an update to the previous videos from Let Thurston Play that you can find on our website, covering a lot of the new info we've all learned over this past month, how Thurston can fit at New Logan, addressing how a better site plan is possible with staging, and sharing the teacher and community outreach that we have done. Before we begin, though, I want to make it clear that I absolutely support the need to get out of the current building and into a new one that isn't overcrowded ASAP, not wait 6 years for deliberation on what to do. I just want it done equitably, in a way that doesn't do serious harm to the educational environment for our kids and teachers, that doesn't compromise the future site for the next half century or more, and one that doesn't increase the risk of building, flooding, damage, and potential uninsurability, all to squeeze two schools onto the property at once. Fortunately, there is a way to do this with staging at New Logan if we act now, and please check out our other videos for more details on different aspects of this plan. The need for a new school, but also the need for it to be done in an equitable way without construction right next to our classrooms, is something that the majority of the Thurston teachers of our kids would agree with. In the absence of meaningful engagement with teachers by the bond committee, we've been collecting teacher statements and survey feedback on plans for the new school. As of this recording, 11 Thurston teachers have given us anonymous statements in favor of staging, with more expressing support privately. Additionally, 23 teachers so far have responded to the survey, clearly expressing that the board should pause to allow for the design of a better plan, also recognizing the clear need for a new building and sharing their concerns with the district's current plan that echo many of the ones that the Let Thurston Play group has been trying to bring to everyone's attention. The statements can be read at the link here, and excerpts from some of them are on the next few slides. Pause the video in each and read them if you're interested. I wouldn't do them justice. The statements have been kept anonymous because many of the teachers feared retaliation from the Board of Education for speaking up, which honestly says a lot too. This is another recurring theme throughout the statements. The teachers don't feel like their input is heard or taken into consideration in this process so far. Please, if you won't listen to me, then at least listen to our children's teachers. Now, on to some updates on the district's plan and what we can all look forward to if the Board of Education isn't convinced to pause and reconsider staging. First, I'd like to recognize Jason Bing and his colleagues in AAPS Capital Teams and Kevin Stansbury of Gilbane for their efforts to improve the new Thurston site plan, for hosting the very helpful office hours at the end of last year, and for all the time they've clearly put into this. So, thank you. It's greatly appreciated. In the revisions that they showed in December, the field and play areas have gotten considerably larger, there's less pavement on the site, a substantial portion of the current oak savanna is preserved while more is planted, and the building itself has been changed a bit in the cafeteria and back of house areas. Fundamentally, though, they are still seriously constrained by the position of the new building. It is shoehorned between the existing school building, which will be occupied during construction, to the south, and recognized wetlands to the north, with very little envelope within which to work. So many of the issues that have been raised by teachers, parents, and the community, such as student safety during construction, the distracted learning environment, the increased risk of building flooding, damage, and potential uninsurability with the building that close to the pond, and the impact on the Thurston Nature Center, can all be traced back to the decision not to stage Thurston at another school while the new building was constructed. This decision forces kids to learn and teachers to teach barely 30 feet from the new building under construction and 5 feet from the construction fence. This lasts for 2 years from 2025 through 2027 while the new building is built and will severely restrict recess space. The construction perimeter and building proximity for the next 2 school years presented in December are actually worse than I had originally estimated in the previous video, with more of the grounds fenced off for construction. There has been a lot of emphasis placed on the perimeter fencing, attempts to schedule the most disruptive activities during time school is out, and other techniques to mitigate the worst effects of having construction so close. But all of these can fall apart if construction doesn't go according to schedule, like what has happened at previous district building projects and is likely to happen at Thurston with the wet, unstable soil near the pond, acknowledged by AAPS geotechnical engineering reports that they are trying to build on. At the end of the day, all of these mitigation techniques are just band-aids on an unnecessarily self-inflicted wound, and they only exist because the bond committee refuses to consider moving the school community off-site. With rates of ADHD and autism on the rise, my son is not the only one who will struggle in this type of environment. Last school year, almost 14% of enrolled students at Thurston had an individualized education plan, or IEP, not counting 504 plans. And Thurston alone has 3 self-contained ASD classrooms. Many neurodivergent kids are also hypersensitive to sound, with noises louder than the threshold as low as 70 to 77 decibels, causing pain and dysregulation. Construction equipment, especially the earth movers, pile drivers, and jackhammers that will be necessary for the foundation with the school on unstable soil so close to the pond, can easily exceed 90 decibels at 50 feet as shown here, as well as cause vibrations through the ground and building, making them impossible to mitigate for all children, neurodivergent or not. In the process, this is going to violate many IEPs for those that need sensory breaks, since there really will be nowhere to go to avoid this noise and vibration when it's happening. These are some of the kids that are going to suffer and fall behind the most with this sort of distraction, and I'd have hoped that with Trustees Basket and Schmidt's backgrounds with kids with special needs, it would have made them more cognizant of this. Instead, their response when I brought this up was to report my son's teacher if I thought that they couldn't handle this, on top of everything our teachers already do, which wasn't terribly helpful. Back to the district's current construction plan. Once the new building is done, over the summer of 2027, everything will be moved from the current building into the new one, the school will be demolished, and the parking lot and drive line will be paved. Then, the bus loop is paved and the area around it is completed over the first 3 months of the 2027 to 28 school year. Geothermal installation can also only begin at this point and consists of scores to hundreds of vertical tunnels drilled about 500 feet into the ground to hold heat-exchanging pipes to allow the building to cool off over the summer and warm up over the winter by shedding or picking up heat from the ground below the field and former school. Thus, it can only begin once the school is demolished. This is only scheduled to take 6 months, but as we've seen at Clegg, it can actually take over 2 years. Hopefully the company contracted for the Clegg installation has improved with the practice, since they're the only ones in this area submitting bids to install geothermal wells as deep as the ones required by the AAPS buildings. Only after that is done can turf and any landscaping over the geothermal wells be planted and allowed to grow. Granted, this period when turf is growing shouldn't be too disruptive to the learning environment, but it will still restrict recess areas. Overall, though, using a more conservative estimate for the geothermal installation, based on the experience at Clegg, the entire timeline for construction on the Thurston site stretches from 2 years as required at New Logan or King to 4 years total. That's more than half the time any given student will be at Thurston. Now, any reasonable staging plan that gets us out of the current building in 2 years is predicated on Thurston fitting into the New Logan building. The previous video explained how New Logan and New Thurston are designed to have the same capacity, but since then we learned that New Logan has 1 fewer classroom than Thurston does right now, 25 versus 26 total. That we are currently 1 room short was confirmed by AAPS and Gilbane during the office hours. Fortunately, current Thurston doesn't need to fit into the new school. 2027 Thurston does. Over the next few school years, AAPS can manage new in-district and school of choice transfers to maintain 3 incoming classes per year, which has been the historical norm at Thurston. With this plan, suggested by Thurston teachers, the total number of classrooms required will fall to 25 by 2027 after the current third grade graduates. This allows Thurston to fit at New Logan without affecting any current students, splitting the school, or displacing any ASD classes as the bond committee has suggested would necessary. It's also probably a good idea just to avoid even more overcrowding at the current Thurston building in the next 2 years. The only remaining challenge is whether the room layout at New Logan will work for the Thurston program. ASD and pre-K through first grade are required to be on the ground floor per law, which would amount to 11 total rooms for 2027 Thurston. The design of all the new buildings by Gilbane locate pre-K through second grade on the ground floor, which would mean that the new Logan should have a total of 13 first floor classes with their single pre-K room, more than enough. Therefore, this clearly isn't a problem. The biggest discrepancy, then, is in the number of pre-K rooms. Thurston has both young fives and preschool, so 2 rooms, while Logan only has 1 of them. So how are these rooms different from normal classrooms? From the floor plan of New Thurston, it appears that the pre-K rooms aren't conjoined with other rooms through a sliding partition, which seems easily enough to temporarily block off with bookshelves or something. They also have what looks like a doorless closet in the room, which could be created with temporary walls like a cubicle for a couple of years. Finally, all of the classrooms appear to have an attached bathroom and sink in the purple shaded regions there, so adding that for a pre-K room is unnecessary. Really, how hard could it be to repurpose a regular class for pre-K for a couple of years? So, with a viable plan laid out for staging Thurston at New Logan, we no longer have to shoehorn 2 buildings onto the site and instead can build a much better space for our kids, teachers, and community that can be enjoyed for the next half century or more. It was stated in one of the Board of Education meetings that even if Thurston were staged, the new building couldn't be built where the current one is and would still end up further north than it's currently situated. Well, yes, it would move slightly further north, but we have multiple plans, including ones drawn up by professional architects, that show otherwise, while accommodating all the features and improvements, including the separate drive line and bus loop, larger parking lot, and the fire lane around the school. Even with all of these, the new building can still be located predominantly on the footprint of the old one, where it can benefit from the existing grading and soil type and compaction there, and much further from the pond and flood-prone parts of the site. This layout minimizes vehicle infrastructure, separates the play spaces from it with the building, reduces future risks of flooding, foundation damage, and the potential inability to insure the building so close to the pond, while preserving the feel and sightlines of the current grounds. Lastly, some other community engagement updates. Both Clegg and King PTOs submitted official statements that expressed dissatisfaction with the way the bond has been handled and called for more meaningful community engagement. Logan PTO has not voiced an official position one way or the other, but the Logan community statements at Board of Ed meetings have only expressed that they don't want to leave their current site. Our petition at Let Thurston Play has over 1,000 signatures, with many families of currently enrolled students among them. Senator Sue Schenck has attended board meetings in person to speak in support of preserving the Thurston Nature Center, and both she and State Representative Jennifer Conlon have written public letters and comments saying the same. We also have the support of all the organizations listed at the bottom there. We have a once-in-generations chance with this bond to really improve AAPS for the future, without compromising the learning environment, safety, or the site layout that really makes Thurston special. Why would we throw all of that away when we don't have to, all for some misguided notion that staging at New Logan can't happen, or would risk the bond, or would be too costly? If you were concerned about your kids learning right next to construction for 4 years, about the lack of play and green space available in the district's plan for the new Thurston grounds and recess space during construction, about the increased risk of flooding that is being ignored by the district and their construction company,
or about the damage to the Thurston Nature Center, please join us at letthurstonplay.com, where you can find all of this information, and by letting the AAPS Board of Education know at their meetings through the link in the video description that we need a better plan. Thank you.